All right, hello everyone. This is the Static Site Editor Design Product and Research weekly meeting for October 26th. We'll kick it off with our new consolidated agenda. I won't recap exactly what I talked about in the engineering call, but I did want to just call out and share my point that I made earlier with Michael, which was that I was really impressed with the whole team for sharing feedback on the re-architecture project and building that proposal that Enrique and I have been discussing on the next steps and how to communicate that outwardly now that we've made a decision about the framework. And I think I learned a lot in the process of some of the intricacies in the back end and how the technology works with it, works with each other, and how the data gets passed around. And so it was very helpful for me, and specifically Enrique's communication and collaboration with the CK editor team over the past couple of weeks has been really great. And even though we didn't end up going with their product, it was very enlightening and professional discussion. So with that, I really just have spent the past what seems like 2 weeks trying to wrap my head around the settings and nav backlog. To recap a little bit about what we talked about this morning or yesterday for Michael. Settings is probably the most immediately accessible area of work, but it's also one that I think as we look at it more in depth has probably some of the more complex and time-consuming issues to address, but also potentially the most value to the user. So I'm very excited about that. And then the navigation backlog, I think, is daunting when you look at it as a whole, but as soon as you start reframing it as against our desire to work iteratively, and you start to see some themes in areas that we're looking to improve, starting to get a sense of what needs to be done there. And I think we can add some real value without too many sweeping changes there. More on that as the proposals come in, but that was kind of the summary of or my takeaway from our call, our one-on-one call this morning. And as I sat with it more today, it kind of solidified. So I think we're actually in a pretty good place to move on additional research, and we can talk about that, Catherine, if you want, about what are the first areas to research and getting baseline measurements and all that stuff. That's all top of mind for me. But other than that, I don't have anything else to discuss today.
Cool. So let's take this moment and jump into the design topics. So the first one we have is from Derek. Do you want to verbalize that?
Yeah, definitely. So basically here, question one is, do we have a final design for the MR template UI? I know in the issue you shared an image, and obviously I had some kind of clarifying questions in here, because basically because we're trying to abstract away the Git terminology, we're basically kind of duplicating the description right now is actually ending up being the commit message as well as the MR description. So at a high level, I just wanted to not do any duplicate work, make sure we have kind of thought this through basically, so we don't have to undo and waste work basically. So so yeah, at a high level, Michael, do you have a final UI? Or I see that you actually added a comment too, so I can end up looking at that, but I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, so you touched, so the question here is in the design, because we have a description that's fully fledged, that description is also probably going to be too large for a commit message itself. Mm-hmm. We have an issue there to provide an optional message on commits. This is something that's been requested or discussed by people, making a descriptive comment about the change that they make. So that's actually a future issue. But if you think that we can do something small in this iteration to like tackle both at once, I'm not totally against it, because it's something that will be needed in the future, and it kind of separates the description from the comment. As for our final design, I think haven't really like refined the UI along with like a description and a comment yet. But that's something that we can work together on. I think at a high level, it's like a text area and an input box, but like how it's laid out is probably like just the real question there. Yeah, I think, yeah, with adding the description MR templates, that's going to blow up the description length, and therefore kind of probably cause an issue with submitting an MR or like a commit message with such a long message. And it's kind of weird to see that. So
Sure.
yeah.
So the comment, so that's planned basically. I see that you linked obviously to this other issue. So that's going to be coming down the pipeline anyway. Is that accurate? Or is it still like a maybe?
That's, I think that's it. Once we handle multiple commits to the same change made from the static site editor. So if we go ahead and move forward, you know, in the next milestone with like kind of the other flows, like right now it's only handbook to static site editor to merge request page. If we explore, okay, for merge request page, because you know you made a suggestion for a page and I want to make an update and change, there's no way for me to go back to the static site editor. If we want to expose that path, this will be necessary. So there's two, I see two paths here. One way now is like do like an MVC of this thing now. Another way is to like auto like commit, like have an auto message from like the static site editor saying like this is a commit made from the static site editor, and the description has everything. But I wanted to say input like this extra message for the commit message, but yeah, maybe we can discuss this in the issue itself if we think is needed. Eric, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think the real problem to solve is one where people are saving drafts or saving multiple changes on a single MR, or potentially editing multiple pages on a single MR or something like that. So right now, yeah, it seems repetitive and unnecessary because you're not going to describe your changes twice. But as soon as we start, you know, having the ability to jump in and out of pages a little more easily, whenever that is, you might be editing a page and want to add the context just about that one specific change. Sure. So yeah, I don't have a good answer, but just coming from, you know, reframing where the root of that functionality lies. Yeah, we could wait on it until that is necessary, or we can find a way to reframe it so it doesn't seem so repetitive now, so that it's in place when we need it.
Okay, cool. Basically the context of, I just wanted to, it seemed repetitive, but there is a plan that makes it not repetitive. So that's fine. That's basically all I wanted to know. So it's not repetitive. It may look like it in the short term, but so that makes sense. So what's kind of nice is the way it's already, the code is basically already set up where we're just forwarding on, like I said, the description to both of those. So everything's wired. We just have to do a small change of like, what do we want to actually pass in what area, which is like one-liners, like very small amount of code change, which is really cool. So cool, that's helpful. And just one idea, which what we could possibly do, I don't know if this is confusing or not, but if it does seem repetitive if there's not a merge request yet, you could not show the comment thing, and then only once there's an existing merge request, then that would be the condition in which we would show that comment, I guess. I don't know, that's just an idea. I don't know if, and again, Michael, you might maybe have already explored that too. I have no idea. But this, I can move forward with this then. That's good to know. So cool. And then,
Cool. I'll chime in on that like issue later about how you want to handle the commit message on that initial one, like what you think is the best way, because yes, funneling that description into the commit message will prevent you from submitting or break something. So yeah, we can
it'll be
discuss
straightforward. I
that
mean, it's
offline.
just, sorry, it's just an input box, so it's not like rocket science, obviously.
Mhm.
It's not too bad, but which is
Okay,
nice. And again, like I said, it's already wired, so that helps us a lot.
cool. Awesome.
And then are we ready to move on to the second one? Does anyone have anything else? Okay. The second one is with respect to the edit handbook pages generated from data files. Doable, just like anything's doable, but it's more complicated than we'd like. And so the issue is actually just for me to figure out the path forward for it and not actually to implement it anyway. But I'm just basically sharing that I don't know how high of a priority this is. I know we kind of discussed maybe doing it, maybe not, but it might not be worth doing for how much effort it's going to take. We'll see. Basically, I'm going to have a chat tomorrow with Chad to like 100% confirm. We're pretty sure that this is just going to be ridiculous to implement for how much value we get out of it. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that might not be a thing moving forward unless you really want to spend some energy on it, basically.
Yeah, I think to reiterate Jean's point inside the issue is like the issue is only to research right now. I think if we take out the scope of trying to implement it as well, hopefully that will ease it. But I think making an informed decision so that, you know, Derek in the future comes back and says, hey, now I know how to map things or whatever, can solve that, or anyone else in the future can come in and tackle it maybe in a different way, or maybe there's some new thing out there that helps with this. But yeah, I think it's worthwhile just to like review or make a decision, yes or no. Cool. Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I agree. And just I assumed that this would be more difficult under the surface. Like it sounds deceptively straightforward until you realize that like we need to solve for any number of files linked from any number of helpers that we have no idea how they're structured. So yeah, like Michael said, we can document what our approach would be and then take it from there.
Another thing I just realized too is, and it'll probably come out of the meeting tomorrow anyway, is like if depending on what, we could basically have a half solution essentially. Like I could, for example, the hard part is like when you're actually running a function and a helper function, then we have to actually know in memory, like we have to essentially pre-record what happens at runtime and then cache some file that, you know, so that's where it gets kind of gnarly. If like a kind of a simple solution could be for partials, for example, like that's a keyword that we could look for, partial, and then there's a path. And so then that's a real kind of, you know, a boring solution basically to say that's related. But again, I don't know if people would want to edit those partials. I have no idea. So we could probably find some medium ground thing, but in terms of a full scalable solution for everything, that's the part that's going to be like probably not going to happen anytime soon. What do you think?
In the spirit of boring solutions, as you talk with Chad tomorrow, maybe just putting this out there. Right now the problem is related to our handbook, and obviously we want to get to the point where we have a solution that's scalable, reusable, and flexible. But we have a finite number of helpers in our handbook. Is there something we can write in the Ruby helper itself that passes the information to the static site editor and allows us to do something really like lo-fi, really dumb, and just get that in and display it? And then we just manually go back and rewrite these helpers in a like a piecemeal manner, one by one. And then as those get updated, and we can document them in like a helper template or something like that, so people know how to like implement this in the future. But if we can actually just send the data from the data and not have to like do all the mapping on our own, that might be already what you're thinking. But just putting it out there, like we have control over both sides of this equation for now, and we can probably take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll make a note of that. Yeah, basically the denoting piece is like scalable or not, which is fine. Like, so that's totally like, especially if it's a
Yeah.
small enough, I just don't know. Like if it was just partial keywords and a certain set of helpers, because I actually remember the helper file being, I don't know, 100 lines of code ish, maybe if I'm remembering right. So that could be doable. So
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, at this point, my take is if it's something we can ship in the next milestone, then it doesn't need to be scalable. If it's something that we can, that is going to take us 3 or 4 milestones, we might as well just fix it the right way, you know, next year when we revisit the idea of partials in general.
Perfect.
All right, cool. So I think that covers the design part of this call. Moving over to the UX research side. So I'm just going to quickly go through my items because I think Catherine will comment on my points in much more detail. But yeah, off the back of just like sense checking with Eric yesterday, one-on-one, it feels like, if we had to pull something out right now, like, is there any kind of research that we could do now? And personally, at the moment, it feels like with settings, there's like a need to like kind of centralize the format and then explore kind of different navigation patterns of how to get potentially from like a in context settings kind of flow. That's like potential one solution validation with navigation. There's a big concept around like groups and projects and making that easier to discover and find and navigate. And then from a problem validation standpoint, one of our priorities is this idea of bookmarking or stars as a way to save context or pages so that you can revisit. I think that one needs a little bit more deeper research before we can come up with solutions, because there's probably a million and one ways to do it. So trying to find the root cause there is interesting. That being said, I think this segues really nicely to some of Catherine's points. So I'll let her verbalize some of that.
Yeah. So basically, I guess for point B, it's kind of like, since I know there's a heavy emphasis on the kind of defining success and measuring success for each of these. For example, the study, if you're kind of doing solution validation and you're testing whether something's an improvement of the existing experience, I think what they'll want is kind of a test of the existing experience as well. So those could either be done in parallel. Maybe you're testing one group on the proposed solution, one group on the existing, or it can be done like you test existing and then you test the proposed. But so there are kind of two, there's another side to that basically. So I think we should kind of outline when each of these need to be done, since they can't really all be done at once. Yeah, so that's point B basically.
Cool. So that's definitely something that us as a group will be measured against, is like the success of our changes. And that will help inform our product decisions, whether we go with the big bang, or at least will help guide us making those iterative improvements. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, even from a design standpoint, it's silly to design something if you don't really know what you're really trying to optimize for. But I think this is more gearing towards like 13.7. And so what we'll probably kind of do is, just start planning and start putting together a case for certain things. There's already common themes around some of the improvements and suggestions. And I think some of the research work that's ongoing right now with yourself, Catherine, and Jeff, and whoever, or Adam, around setting that baseline might kind of dovetail nicely with some of this stuff. So yeah, maybe that will like segue to your point A.
Yeah, basically, I don't know if you already have issues for these studies, but just feel free to loop me into them so that we can talk about like when you would like to conduct each one of them, or which one is kind of like highest priority and which one might need a benchmarking study as well, just so we can iron that out so it doesn't like creep up all at the same time. But yes, so, but also for point A, so this one was just more about auditing the different settings. I think that does actually, well, hopefully tie into the solution validation, because just what I'm seeing from going through all those different settings is that there are some pages, for example, some pages that follow the collapsing and expanding format, and some pages that just kind of list everything. There are some settings where you need to take an action, and there are some settings that are just kind of showing you information. So I just see kind of a mixed bag of how settings are arranged. And I think that probably will hopefully tie into what's going on in the solution validation about the format. But yeah, but I had just had a question personally here. Do any of you kind of have ideas for the best way to access different areas of GitLab? I'm not sure if that's by getting a, for example, getting a gold or what is it, gold or ultimate subscription, or if it's like through the GDK or something. But does anyone know how you usually would access those different things? Because, for example, in group settings, there are certain things I can't see because of the whole like different tiers and different subscriptions thing. And that's what I realized.
All I know is that you can get gold. You can request to have your membership, your account upgraded to gold. There's a link in the handbook. I can find that if you haven't done that already. And then I think you can like put in a one-off request to have a specific group upgraded to gold as well. But I'm not 100% sure that's even documented. That might just be like Slack rumors.
Okay. Yeah. In the past, I did the gold thing from the handbook, but I got it applied to the account, or I guess the personal namespace. And it wasn't until like literally a couple years later today, or a couple days ago, where I was like, wait, is that the problem? Because all the groups that I create are all on the free plan, and I never really understood why until now. But I was just curious if that's how, for example, you would handle like going in to see different tiers, or if designers
Yeah,
or engineers are taking another approach.
I'm interested to hear how you're doing it because I don't have insight into those tiers. I just use my gold account, and one of my blind spots would be like the admin for self-managed instances, right? Like I haven't taken upon myself to install it on a server myself and assign myself an admin. That would probably be my first instinct rather than install the GDK and run it locally. But what do you all think?
I have a thought about this in general, as in like the kind of focus on our group right now is not so much like answering where exactly every single setting will go. It's like we're providing guidelines. So it's almost to me like I can get 80 or 90% of the things bucketed into like where they need to be. And then we leverage the power of our distributed teams and their focus on their specific areas to say like, can you sense check this to see if this will work for your kind of group? Because you could have the group like the static site editor that has almost no settings, right? Like we have like a configuration file, or we have other teams that require a lot of like integrations with third parties and like Prometheus and all these other things and configuration files. And then like teams that have to set up special runners to do things. So for us to get that domain knowledge across everything, I think we're going to gain that through getting feedback from the other teams. And then from there, we build that knowledge. And some of that's already been discussed in the settings UX stuff, but I think yeah, diving into the details, yeah, the golden ultimate accounts are probably like the way to go. And then, yeah, I don't know what's going on with Gitpod, but there might be like special like instances that could be set up, because I've heard with Gitpod that setting up like scenarios or configurations that require runners and things like that is less painful through Gitpod, especially for what we need to do, where we just need to like click through and go through things rather than building on top of stuff. Like I'm talking from a design and product here, Derek. You know, in your case, you might need to like build and run things properly, but yeah, just like kicking the tires and seeing what's under there. I think, yeah, Gitpod and like getting the proper ultimate accounts are the best ways for now.
I haven't used the Gitbot, but it sounds like a great alternative from what I understand what it is. So either that or the GDK. I'd recommend, that's a great question, by the way, Catherine. Like I've never thought of, like, that's a great question. So I'd probably look in like the GDK channel, or maybe there's a Gitpod channel or something like that. And like, because it's hard not to envision that the GDK would allow you to set a flag or do something and it'd be built in so you could test the different tiers. Basically, that would be very surprised if you can't do that in a simple way. Obviously I could be wrong, but I think just asking in the GDK channel would at least get you, you know, someone probably knows, I would think. I don't, but I'm sure that's a good place to at least start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that it actually, in this group, that's not a situation you have to think about too much, because the static site editor is not at a certain tier. But like, I think maybe for the groups working on epics or something, they might have encountered this situation more. So that actually makes sense.
Like part of their testing strategy might be have it on and have it off to make sure, like, I just don't know, but I could envision something like that. So they might be the right people to ask. Whoever creates ultimate features, basically, they might have the most know-how, maybe. I'm not sure.
So another point I want to raise here is like, even if we got access to anything in GitLab, there are scenarios that us as a group, we may not know about. For example, like with cascading settings, where in compliance, they deal with this a lot, where if something's set at the instance level, inside like the project level, a checkbox may be ticked or unticked, and you don't really know why it's happening. Or like if you tick that checkbox, you can't really change it, or like it's not disabled, or like little things like this. Even if we have access to the thing, this is where I think like getting feedback from other people, other groups is useful, because cool, we can go into settings and see it, like, yeah, that looks legit. But then there's all this like like all the plumbing and all that wired up that we may not know the history or like the gotchas. And yeah, just going through some of the existing work that people have done, it's just highlighted to me like how crazy things can get.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know, because as I was doing the settings audit, I was like, this isn't going to be every single one for the group settings, but at least we're not necessarily concerned about too granular level for now. So I'll resolve that at some point, but not right now. Just my disclaimer is that the group settings are not fully complete because I haven't resolved that yet. And I need to also figure out the admin settings route. But yeah, I think in the past I had used AWS just to like set up a GitLab account. But anyway, more to follow.
Thanks for doing that audit, by the way. It's going to be very helpful.
You're welcome. Yeah, they're definitely a mixed bag of settings. And there are pages like webhooks where it's just, I don't know. It's just different than like the general settings format. It'll be interesting to kind of dive into that deeper. Well, I didn't even notice that we went over. But yeah, that's all for me. Sorry about that.
No. Thank you. Yeah, I was just looking for the webhook settings now, so I was curious what those look like. But yeah, that's it for the agenda. Anything else for today?
Nope.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Stop the recording.